Welcome to a presentation on neoclassical physics. Neophysics has the most accurate theories of physics. We challenge you to disprove us. If not, we welcome you to join us and profit from the new science. In this presentation, we discuss about extending Bohr-type classical orbits to explain helium-like two-electron atoms and ions. We find that there exists two types of orbits. One, stacked orbits, where the electrons move in two different parallel orbits placed on either side of the nucleus. And two, planar orbits, where the electrons are placed at diametrically opposite ends of the same orbit around the nucleus. Stacked orbits have a lower energy state with respect to the With respect to the helium atom, they correspond to parahelium structure. Planar orbits have a higher energy state. With respect to the helium atom, they correspond to orthohelium structure. The energy levels of a parahelium structure is closely related to the persistent spectral lines of the neutral helium atom. The ionization energy measured experimentally for different ions from helium to calcium lies between the theoretical ionization energies calculated from the stacked and planar orbits. Perhaps this indicates that the experimental result may be due to a mixture of these two, that is the stacked and planar types orbits. Irving Langmuir came close to explaining these in 1921, but he missed it. Bohr-type classical models were not properly extended to explain helium-like two-electron atoms and ions. Irving Langmuir came close, but he was misled by a non-rigorous thought about stability. Consider a nucleus with p protons, stacked by two electrons around it as shown below. So these two things in blue are electrons, and this is the nucleus with p protons. And these are the two planes of revolution parallel to each other. Let d1 be the distance of the top electron from the nucleus. Its radial distance from the nucleus be r1 and the vertical distance be z1. Then using Pythagoras result, we get d1 is equal to square root of r1 square plus z1 square. Similarly, for the bottom electron, we get d2 is equal to square root of r2 square plus z2 square. Let m be the mass of the electron and minus e be the charge. Then by considering that the nucleus is too heavy to move, we can write the net energy E of the two electron system as here. So E equals half m dr1 by dt square plus half m dr2 by dt square. So these two are the radial kinetic energy terms, plus half m r1 square d theta 1 by dt square plus half m r2 square d theta 2 by dt square. These are the rotational energy terms of the two electrons. These two are the potential energy term due to nucleus electron interaction. Minus 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught p e square by d1 is for the first electron, and this is for the second electron. And this is the potential energy due to electron-electron interaction, 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught e square by z1 plus z2. So these are all the energy terms of the two electron system without the contribution from nucleus. The nucleus is considered to be at rest because it's very heavy. So, and we can write the angular momentum conservation equation of each electron as here: a1 equals m r1 square d theta 1 by dt, which is a constant, and a2 equals m r2 square d theta 2 by dt, which is a constant. These are for the two electrons. Here theta 1 and theta 2 are the angular displacement variables in the plane of revolution. Exploiting the symmetric situation in the problem, and for simplicity, we can assume that the radial distances r1 equals r2 equals common variable r. The angular displacement variables theta1 is equal to theta2 is equal to theta, some common variable. And the vertical distances z1 is equal to z2 equals z. Therefore, we get the two angular momentum terms as equal. A1 is equal to A2 equals some common A. These are the angular momentum terms. And we get the distance between the nucleus and the two electrons are also equal. That is D1 equals D2 equals D. And we have just written D here. D is equal to square root of R square plus Z square, where R is this and Z is this. Therefore, we get the net energy equation of the two electrons as this E equals m dr by dt square, which is the summation of the two radial kinetic energy terms. And this is a square by mr square, which is the summation of the two rotational energy terms. This is the summation of the two nucleus electron potential energy terms, and this is just the electron potential energy terms. This is just single term, there is no summation in this. So in this energy equation, we can assume that Z equals R alpha, where alpha can be some constant. And from this we can get a range of circular orbit solutions with varying net energy term. But let us find the circular orbit solution with minimum possible energy. So this is the energy equation. We consider that the net energy E is conserved, that is E equals constant. So we get d by dr equals 0, that is the derivative of energy with respect to the radial variable r, d by dr equals 0. So this equation shows d by dr. So this first term is the derivative of this m dr by dt whole square. We get this d square r by dt square term here. This is the derivative of this is the derivative of this, and this last term is the derivative of the electron potential energy term. Since we are interested in the circular orbit solutions, we assume d square r by dt square is equal to 0. Therefore, using this d square r by dt square equals 0, the d by dr equation here, this gets simplified as this. We can take 2 common out since this summation is equal to 0, and we are left with this simplified version of d by dr equals 0. So in this equation, there are terms with dz by dr factor like this term, and rest of the terms are with dr by dr factor. The dr by dr factor has not been written explicitly because it's just 1 here, but for example, minus a square by mr cube has a dr by dr here factor here, which is not shown. So the dr by dr factor has not been written explicitly here, but since this whole equation is derived by considering the radial derivative of energy, that is d by dr equation, the dr by dr terms are exist here implicitly. So we assume that the coefficients of dr by dr and dz by dr factors are individually 0. That is, the coefficient of dr by dr factor will be this minus a square by mr cube, plus from the second part we get 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught p square r divided by r square plus z square power 3 by 2. This equals 0. And we get the coefficient of dz by dr as this. This is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught p square z from here, r square plus z square 3 by 2 minus this. This is, we just drop the dz by dr term here because the summation is 0. So this is the coefficient of dz by dr. This is the coefficient of dr by dr in this equation. So we get these equations are same as the force balance method, whatever we get from the force balance method. But energy method gives a more general set of equations, which we will explore in later presentations. So from these force balance equations, we get this. From the second part of the equation, we get this 4pz cube is equal to r square plus z square power 3 by 2. It just comes out by taking out all the common factors from this, just reduces to this. And from this we can write r as r is equal to z square root of 4p power 2 by 3 minus 1. Now using this r square plus z square power 3 by 2 is equal to 4pz cube in the first part of the equation, here we get this equation. And again using the expression for r here, we get this second part of this equation. So ultimately we get 4 pi epsilon naught a square 4z cube is equal to me square into 4p to power 3 4p to the power of 2 by 3 minus 1 whole square z power 4. So from these two r and from these two equations we get the expressions for z and r. So z is nothing but this expression, z equals 4 pi epsilon naught a square by me square into 4 by this term square, and r is the same 4 pi epsilon naught a square by me square into 4 by this term to the power of 3 by 2. So the only difference between these two is this, here there is power 2 and here it is power 3 by 2. So this factor inside the circle is basically Bohr's radius of the first energy level hydrogen atom orbit. So this was already discussed by Bohr in his explanation of hydrogen spectrum. So the expression for energy E we saw earlier is the combined energy for the two electrons together. So this equation is the sum is for the two electrons together, energy of both the electrons together. So therefore to get the energy associated with just one electron, we need to take half of this. That is we should consider E by 2. So, and then using the Bohr's angular momentum criteria, that is A, the angular momentum is an integral multiple of h bar, that is A equals nh bar, where n equals 1, 2, 3, any integer. And we have the expressions for z and r. Using the expressions for r, z in the energy equation, and using the this equation dr by dt equals 0, because this is a circular orbit solution, we get this E by 2 equals minus 4p to the power of 2 by 3 minus 1 whole cube by 4 square into this term in the square bracket, 1 by 2 me power 4 pi epsilon naught whole square n square h bar square. This nh is basically a square has been replaced by n square h bar square. So this term inside the square bracket corresponds to the energy level of the first hydrogen orbit derived by Bohr, and we know that it is equal to 13.6 electron volts. So that is this term without the n factor here, there is no n square here. So dropping the n square, this term inside the square bracket becomes 13.6 electron volts. This is in terms of energy. So using this 13.6 in this equation inside the square bracket, we get E by 2 equals minus 13.6 by n square into this term here, 4p 2 by 3, 4p to the power of 2 by 3, that term. So this expression works for any p greater than or equal to 2, where p is the number of protons in the nucleus. So helium nucleus has 2 protons. So using p equals 2 for helium, and using that in the E by 2 equation, we get E by 2 equals minus this p, if you put 2 here, we get minus 27 by 16 for this factor, and the remaining thing is 13.6 by n square. So the overall we get E by 2 is minus 22.95 divided by n square. So this is for a single electron of the 2 electron system. Therefore, the first ionization potential for helium atom will be 22.95 electron volt. That is, in order to remove one electron from the stacked 2 electron system in its ground state, we need 22.95 electron volts. And the total energy required to remove both the electrons from the stacked orbits is 22.95 into 2, which is 45.9 electron volts. Irving Langmuir basically got misled at this point about the stability of these stacked orbits. According to Bohr's model for hydrogen-like one electron ions, the ionization energy for a single electron in the ground state in a helium ion will be 54.4 electron volts. Basically, we get the formula for this energy at different levels n as minus 54.4 by n square. So when n equals 1, or that is the first energy level, the ionization energy becomes 54.4 electron volts. And according to the calculation, the combined ionization energy of the two electrons in the stacked orbits is 45.9 electron volts. That is, the stacked orbit is at a higher energy state compared to the single electron ion state of the helium, because it needs less energy to ionize than the single electron state. That is, basically here by supplying 45.9 electron volts, we can ionize both the electrons. We can get two free electrons out of this system. But here we need to supply 54.4 electron volts for this single electron to get this electron out from the system. So basically the energy level difference is shown here. This is the stacked orbit, which has minus 45.9 electron volts. And this is the lone electron system shown here. It has minus 54.4 electron volts. So the stacked orbit has 8.5 electron volts higher than the lone electron ion, helium ion. Based on this fact, Langmuir thought that the atom is unstable. This atom with two stacked electrons is unstable because it can lose one electron and give out this 54.4 minus 45.9. So 54.9 is the energy associated with this, and 45.9 with this stacked orbit. So the difference between them is 8.5 electron volts, as we saw in the previous slide. So this stacked orbit is at a higher energy state, 8.5 electron volts higher. So Langmuir thought that it can give up this 8.5 electron volts and one electron free out of the system to reach this more stabler one electron configuration. That is, this will give off one electron and some energy and reach this more stabler state shown here. But this does not happen. But for this to happen, one of the electrons must receive an energy of 22.95, which is its single ionization energy of this single electron. It has to receive this 22.95 electron volt from an external source first. It cannot borrow this energy from the other electron in the system. For it to happen spontaneously from within the atom without any external energy input, the electrons have to break a circular deadlock. That is, unless one electron, say electron A, flies off, the other electron, the electron B, cannot become unstable. And unless electron B becomes unstable and gives off at least 22.95 electron volt, electron A cannot fly off. So this is the circular deadlock. Basically, electron A should fly off first so that the electron B becomes unstable and falls to the lower energy state. But how will this electron A get the energy in the first place? Before electron B falls to the lower energy, it cannot get. So this one is waiting for the other. So this is a circular deadlock. Langmuir did not think clearly through this deadlock situation. Ideally, both these electrons at minus 22.95 electron volt energy level will be having the same tendency to reach the more stabler minus 54.4 electron volt state. But both will be waiting for each other to give up some energy, and both will not reach that state. Besides this, there is the difficulty that the electron which loses 54.4 minus 22.95. This 22.95 is the single electron energy, and 54.4 is the energy of the single electron configuration. So the difference between them is 31.45. So if one of these electrons in the stacked orbit reaches this higher energy or more stabler state of 54.4, then it has to give up this much energy, 31.45 electron volt. So the electron which loses 31.45 electron volt must lose it in two packets simultaneously. One packet with exactly 22.95 electron volt, which is given to the other electron in the system, and another packet with exactly 8.5 electron volt, which is given out to the surroundings. And the net angular momentum change of the electron in this process must be zero, because both the minus 54.4 electron volt state, that is the single electron helium ion, and the minus 22.95 electron volt state in this energy of this one electron in this two stacked electron state. So both these minus 54.4 electron volt state and minus 22.95 electron volt state have the same angular momentum, h bar. So when it goes from this state to this state, there is no angular momentum change. It's h bar to h bar change. So the electron should undergo a process where there is no angular momentum change. This process seems impossible. Therefore, Langmuir's logic is wrong. Perhaps the best way to achieve Langmuir type transition would be to give one photon of 22.95 electron volt to say electron A. So we give the 22.95 to electron A so that it flies off, and one photon of energy 22.95 minus 13.6, that is 9.35 electron volt to electron B to this. So we give A 22.95 and to this 9.35. So we give 9.35 to electron B so that it reaches the second energy level of the single electron configuration, that is minus 54 by 0.4 by 2 square. So this is the second energy level of the single electron helium ion. So we send it to the second energy level of the single electron configuration. So that needs only 13.6 electron volts. So if we give 9.35 electron volts, it can go from 22.95 to this second energy level of this single electron state. And from there, it can drop down to the first energy level, that is the minus 54.4 electron volt, giving off this much, 40.8 electron volts. So one of the this electron A has flown off, and this electron B, which was in stacked configuration, will go to a single electron helium configuration, but to the second energy level of that, so which has 13.6 electron volts. So when it drops from 13.6 to minus 54.4 electron volts, it gives off 40.8 electron volts. But we should provide an external energy of 22.95 plus 9.35, that is a total of 32.3 electron volt to initiate this transition, or for this transition to happen. So once we give 32.3 electron volts, we get back 40.8 electron volts from the system, and which is the 8.5 electron volt that Langmuir calculated. So this is the way of achieving that transition. It cannot happen on its own by energy exchange within these two electrons. We have to supply external energy for this to happen, to make this happen. However, the oft-quoted value for the first ionization of helium is 24.6 electron volts, not 22.95 electron volts. So this is an error of 6.7% with respect to this 24.6 electron volts. So we are down by 6.7% from the experimental value. We shall shortly address this discrepancy. Let us first look at the spectra predicted by assuming the experimental ionization energy, that is 24.6 electron volts, and the energy derived for stacked orbit theoretically, that is 22.95 electron volts. So we took the wavelength values for the persistent lines of the neutral helium spectrum in nanometers from this table, from this NIST table. The URL is shown here and here. So these are the different values that we found: 53.7, 58.4, 388.9, all this in nanometers. These are the wavelengths that are recorded from the helium spectrum. And this is the calculation done using minus 24.6 by n square at different energy level n. And this is the calculation done using 22.95 by n square. So from this table we can see that overall it is the spectrum predicted by the 22.95 electron volt, which is closer to the experimental result from NIST for most of these intense persistent lines. For example, this is 53.7, this is 53.8, this is also close 54, this is 58.4, this is 56.7, and this is 57.6. So 57.6 is closer to this. This is 388.9. So the closest we get with 24.6 is 362.9, which is a transition from energy level 3 to 2. But here we get 389, which is pretty close to this 388.9, and this is also a transition from energy level 3 to 2. So overall we see that this 22.95 calculations are much closer to the NIST values than the 24.6 electron volts. So there is no really case for 24.6 being the right value. So using the E by 2 equation derived earlier, this is for the single electron in the stacked electron configuration. So the energy of the single electron E by 2 derived earlier, we can find the ionization potential of any 2 electron ion when P is greater than or equal to 2. So this is more general. This is not just for helium. It is valid for any nucleus with P protons where P is greater than or equal to 2. So we can just put n equals 1 in this equation and find it for different the ionization energy for different ions. So for P equals 2, that is the first ionization of helium, we saw it is 22.95. This is for lithium, P equals 3, we get 64.86, which is the second ionization energy of lithium. The experimental value is 75.6. And this is for the P equals 4, we get 130.13 from our theory, and the experimental value is 153.9, and so on. So the table of values, the experimental values we found was up to P equals 20. This is calcium. So the 19th ionization of calcium has 5128.8 electron volts experimentally, and theoretically we calculate 4607 electron volts this one here. So these ionization energies, the measured ionization energies are taken from this book, CRC Handbook of Chemistry and Physics, 89th edition, edited by Lidé, 2008. So these values, the experimental values, are consistently greater than our theoretical calculation. Let us now consider planar orbit for the p proton 2 electron system. So the arrangement is like this. The 2 electrons are at the diametrically opposite ends of the same orbit. This is one circular orbit, and these are the diagonally opposite ends of the of a diameter. So this is the total energy of this system of the 2 electrons, ignoring the contribution from the nucleus. So E by 2 is, this is the radial energy portion, this is the rotational energy term, this is the energy term, potential energy term between the nucleus and the electron, and this is the electron-electron potential energy term. So assuming that this energy E equals constant, we get dE by dr equals 0, and we are interested in the circular orbit solution, so we use d square r by dt square equals 0 like before. So using these conditions, we get the radius as this r equals 4 pi epsilon naught n square h bar square by me square, where nh is nothing but angular momentum. A equals nh bar, this A. So this term into 4 by 4p minus 1. So this term is related to the Bohr radius, Bohr hydrogen radius, as we saw earlier, and this is the extra factor, which depends on the number of protons in the nucleus. So we get from this, using these values, value of r here and this condition d square r by dt square and or dr by dt equals 0, and all these conditions like we did earlier in the previous slides. Using these conditions in E by 2, we get the total energy of this circular orbit system as this minus 4p minus 1 by 4 whole square into this term, which is related to the energy of the hydrogen atom. So this value we know was 13.6 we saw earlier, except if we drop the n square. So we can convert this whatever inside the square bracket as 13.6 by n square. So this whole thing bracket can be replaced by this, and this factor remains as it is. 4p minus 1 by 4 whole square is same. So the energy associated with a single electron of these two electron system is given by minus 13.6 by n square into 4p minus 1 by 4 whole square. So using this E by 2 equation, which is the energy associated with the single electron of the two electron system derived earlier, we can find the ionization potential of any two electron ion when p is greater than or equal to 2. So just like we found in the stacked orbit case, here we are finding the ionization energy in case the orbits planar orbits case. So by putting n equals 1 in this equation, we find the ionization energy for single electron from the two electron system. So for helium p equals 2, we get theoretically we get 41.65 electron volt, and experimentally we know it is 24.6. For lithium we get theoretically 102.85, and from the experiments we get 75.6, and so on. And for calcium p equals 20, we get theoretically 5304.85 electron volt, and experimentally we get 5128.8 electron volts here. So we find that the measured ionization energy in this column is consistently lower than our calculation. So in the previous case it was consistently higher. Now in this case of the planar orbits, it is consistently lower than our theoretical prediction. So we can say that the ionization potential is a mixture of these planar and stacked orbits. For example, in the helium case, the first ionization potential of helium has been measured as 24.6 electron volts. Perhaps we could think of this as a mixture of 91% of stacked type orbit, which has 22.95 electron volt energy, and 9% these planar orbits which have 41.65 electron volts of ionization energy. So we mix 91% of 22.5 electron volts and 9% of 41.65 electron volts to get 24.6 electron volt, which is the experimentally observed value. Similarly, for every other atom in the list here, we can consider that the measured ionization potential is a mixture of the stacked and planar orbit types. So this is a list of table for all these elements. We can for whatever the number it's available till calcium p equals 20. So we have calculated for all this. We have just shown for these few ions here. So for example, p equals 6, which is carbon, from the stacked orbit calculation we get 333.44, and from the planar orbit calculation we get 449.65, and the experimentally measured value is this 392.09, which is between these two values, and in this case it turns out to be almost 50-50 mixture. So we get 49.5% of this stacked orbit and 50.5% of the planar orbit. If we mix them experimentally, from the mixture we get a an experimental value in between them, 392.09 electron volts. So the energy difference between the two states, for example, the planar state in helium case 41.65 electron volts, and the stacked orbit 22.95 electron volts, the difference is 18.7 electron volts. And this is like the difference between the ortho and para helium states. In literature, the energy difference between the ortho and para helium structures is reported as 19.55 electron volts. Our theoretical value is pretty close to this, 18.7. So much of these discrepancies found in the spectral line predictions and in the prediction of the energy difference between the ortho and para states here can be addressed by considering the effect of the magnetic moment of the nucleus. The magnetic moment induces nodal and apsidal precession of the electron orbits. This effect has been usually or wrongly attributed to the spin of the electron, but it is actually nodal and apsidal precession. So we shall discuss the effect of this nuclear magnetism and also the movement of the nucleus, which has been ignored here. So we shall, the corrections due to this nuclear magnetism and due to the nucleus itself moving, we shall discuss those effects on the finer structure of the spectral lines in future presentations. So we end this presentation here. Thank you. If you want to understand the concepts of physics in the clearest way, regardless of the concerns about scoring high marks in exams, please visit neophysics.com. Thank you.